My name is Daniel Ramon, and the day my mother casually told me, "We're selling your house," was the day I realized my family had no idea what they were dealing with. I was in another city when the message came. No warning, no discussion, just a text. "We're selling the house. It's been empty too long." I stared at the screen. Read it once, then again, because something about it felt wrong. Not emotional, not dramatic, just incorrect. I called immediately. She picked up on the second ring. "Yes," she said, like I was interrupting her. "What do you mean you're selling my house?" I asked. A small pause. Then, "It's been sitting there for months," she replied. "No one is using it." Using it. That word again. People always assume that if something looks inactive, it has no purpose. "You didn't think to ask me?" I said. "We tried," she replied quickly. "You're always busy. You never respond." That part wasn't entirely false. But it also wasn't the full story. "I told you I'd handle it," I said. "And you didn't," she shot back. "So we did." Silence. Because from her perspective, that made sense. From mine, it changed everything. "How far have you gone?" I asked. Another pause. Then, "We've already listed it," she said. "Offers are coming in." Listed. That word hit differently. Because listing meant exposure. And exposure was something that property was never meant to have. "Take it down," I said immediately. "No," she replied. No hesitation. No consideration. Just refusal. "We finally found a serious buyer," she continued. "Good money. Clean deal." Clean. I almost smiled. Because nothing about this was clean. "How much?" I asked. She told me. And for a second, I said nothing. Because the number wasn't just low. It was wrong. Completely disconnected from reality. "You're underpricing it," I said. "We're being realistic," she replied. "It's not as valuable as you think." That was the problem. They weren't measuring value. They were guessing. "Send me the documents," I said. "Why?" she asked. "It's already moving forward." "Send them," I repeated. A pause. Then a sigh. "Fine." The call ended. A few minutes later, the files came through. I opened them. Scrolled slowly. Carefully. Because details matter. Names. Dates. Clauses. Signatures. Everything looked normal. Too normal. And that's when I saw it. Or rather, what I didn't see. There was no federal clearance reference. No compliance section. No restricted designation notice. Nothing. I leaned back. Exhaled slowly. Because now, I understood the situation completely. They didn't just list the property. They exposed something that was never meant to be public. And worse, they did it without authorization. My phone buzzed again. My father this time. "You saw the listing?" he asked. "Yes," I replied. "And," he said. He expected approval. Relief. Maybe even gratitude. "You need to take it down," I said calmly. A pause. Then, "Why?" he asked. I stood up. Walked toward the window. Looking out over the city. Thinking. Because explaining this over the phone wasn't going to be simple. "That property isn't standard real estate," I said. "It's a house," he replied. "Walls. Land. Location. That's it." "No. Not even close. It's federally protected," I said. Silence. Then, "What does that mean?" he asked. I didn't answer immediately. Because this was the moment. The line between assumption and reality. "It means it can't be sold like this," I said. "It shouldn't have been listed at all." Another pause. Longer. Then my father exhaled. "You're overcomplicating things," he said. "We're just selling a property." No, they weren't. They were triggering something much bigger. "You're not selling a house," I replied quietly. "You're attempting to transfer restricted property." The words landed differently. Not fully understood, but heavy enough to matter. "You're saying this is a problem?" he asked. I looked back at the documents. Then at the timestamp. Then at the listing status. And that's when I realized. It had already gone live. Public. Visible. Too far to quietly reverse. "It's more than a problem," I said. "How much more?" he pressed. I paused. Because once I said it, everything would change. "For now," I said slowly, "it means someone is going to step in." Silence. Then, "Who?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. Because once I said it, this wouldn't stay a family issue. It would become something official. Something structured. Something they couldn't control. "It won't be us handling it anymore," I said. Another pause. Then his voice. Lower now. "What does that mean?" I took a slow breath. Then said the one thing that shifted everything. "It means jurisdiction just changed." Silence. Deep. Uncomfortable. Because now, for the first time, he understood something simple. They didn't just make a decision without me. They made a decision about something they never understood. And now, someone else was going to correct it. Not emotionally. Not personally. Procedurally. And once that process starts, it doesn't ask for permission. The next morning, it didn't start with a call. It started with silence. The kind that feels wrong. Heavy. Unsettling. Then, the cars arrived. Dark. Unmarked. One after another. Parking neatly along the street outside the house. Neighbors noticed immediately. Curtains shifted. Phones appeared. Because scenes like that don't go unnoticed. My phone rang. My mother. Her voice was different. Not confident. Not in control. "They're here," she said. No greeting. No explanation. Just that. "Who?" I asked, even though I already knew. "I don't know," she replied quickly. "They're asking about the property. About the listing." Of course they were. I closed my eyes briefly. "How many?" I asked. "For maybe 5, she said. "They're not explaining anything. They wouldn't." Not yet, because that's not how this works. Did you show them the documents? I asked. Yes, she said. And they said something's missing. Missing. That was one way to describe it. They keep using the word unauthorized, she added. I exhaled slowly, because now, it had officially moved beyond us. I need to speak to whoever's in charge, I said. A pause, then muffled movement, voices in the background, footsteps, and then, a new voice. Calm, controlled. This is Officer Malik, he said. Who am I speaking with? Daniel Rahman, I replied. A short pause. Recognition. Not emotional. Procedural. Mr. Rahman, he said. We've been trying to reach you. I've been out of the city, I said. What's the situation? Another pause. Measured this time. As of now, he said. This property has been flagged under restricted federal classification. Clear. Direct. No room for interpretation. And the listing? I asked. Invalid, he replied. Unauthorized exposure of protected asset. My mother's voice came back faintly in the background. What does that mean? No one answered her, because the answer wasn't simple. What happens next? I asked. We're securing the site, he said. No further access without clearance. Securing. That word always sounds calm, until you realize what it actually means. Is the buyer there? I asked. Yes, he replied. He arrived shortly before we did. Of course he did. Perfect timing. What's his status? I asked. A slight pause. Confused, the officer said, and currently being briefed. I could imagine it. The buyer standing there, documents in hand, expecting keys, and instead, getting questions. What about the contract? I asked. Non-binding under current classification, he said. He's been informed. I nodded slowly, even though he couldn't see me, because this was exactly how it would unfold. Controlled. Step by step. No emotion. No debate. Just process. I'll be there in an hour, I said. We'll be waiting, he replied. The call ended, but the situation didn't. It escalated. Fast. Because once something like this is flagged, it doesn't stay contained. My phone buzzed again. This time, my father. What is going on? He demanded. No calm now. No confidence. Just pressure. I told you to take the listing down, I said. We didn't think. I know. I cut in quietly. That's the problem. Silence. Then, they're saying we can't even go inside, he said. Correct. That's standard, I replied. Standard for what? He snapped. I walked toward the door. Already moving. Restricted property, I said. Another pause. Then, this is just a house, he said. No, it wasn't. And it never was. You're still thinking about it the wrong way, I replied. Then explain it, he said. I stopped for a second, because this was the moment. The one where everything they believed would finally collapse. That property isn't just owned, I said slowly. It's designated. Silence. He didn't understand. Not fully, but he felt it. What does that mean for us? He asked. I picked up my keys, opened the door, and stepped outside. It means, I said calmly, this is no longer our situation to manage. A pause. Then, what does that leave us with? He asked. I closed the door behind me, locked it, and said the one thing that made everything real. Consequences. By the time I arrived, the street was already quiet again. Too quiet. The kind of silence that follows authority. The cars were still there, parked in a straight line, unmoved, controlled. I stepped out and walked toward the house. 2 officers stood near the entrance. They didn't stop me. They recognized me. Mr. Rahman, one of them said, stepping aside. Inside, everything felt different. Same walls, same space, but no longer familiar. Because once something is classified, it stops being personal. My parents stood in the living room, not arguing, not speaking, just waiting. The buyer stood near the door, holding a folder, uncertain. You didn't mention any of this, he said as I approached. I wasn't involved in the listing, I replied calmly. He looked at the officers, then back at me. So this deal is? Over, I said. Simple. Final. He nodded slowly. Not angry. Just done. Because this wasn't something he could negotiate. He left without another word. The door closed behind him. And just like that, the situation simplified. My father looked at me. Different now. No authority. No certainty. What happens now? He asked. I walked to the table, picked up the documents they had signed, then placed them down again, carefully. Now, I said, everything goes back under proper control. My mother finally spoke. We were just trying to help, she said. I looked at her. Calm. I know, I replied. But you didn't understand what you were handling. That wasn't blame. It was fact. My father exhaled slowly. You should have told us, he said. I met his eyes. Steady. You should have asked, I replied. Silence. But this time, it wasn't defensive. It was acceptance. Because now, they understood something they hadn't before. This was never just a house. It was responsibility, structure, control, and those things don't respond well to assumptions. An officer stepped closer. Everything is secured, he said. We'll take it from here. I nodded once. Thank you. He left. The room settled again. Quieter, lighter, but changed. Permanently. I turned toward the door. Not to leave the situation, but to move forward from it. Because this was never about stopping them. It was about correcting what they didn't see. And making sure it didn't happen again. Glowing star moral of the story. Not everything that looks simple is simple. Some responsibilities come with rules you can't ignore. Always understand what you're dealing with before you try to control it.